Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. So this is the first video in my series on the 10th generation Honda Civic. So I just got this 2017 Honda Civic and it has 40,000 miles pretty much exactly on it. I'm going to go ahead and do some maintenance because I'm planning on doing a lot of driving in this car. So it's 40,000 miles, shouldn't need a whole lot of stuff. But the one thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start by changing the CVT fluid. Alright, so first thing I want to do is we're going to get access to the fill plug. There's no reason to take it off or drain the old fluid out until we can make sure we can get access to the fill plug. So I've got my Civic here up on some drive up ramps, some plastic ramps, which are really handy, especially for the Civic since it's so low to the ground. The next step is to get off the shield that's underneath the car. It's held on with these little metal, you use a flathead screwdriver and you turn them, and you have to do this just to change the oil or anything else, and then they pop out. My shield is basically destroyed and it was rubbing on the highway on the way home, and there's caught a little bit of roadkill too, so I'm not even going to try to fix that. I'm just going to order a new one. But for the purposes of your car, we need to get this off. That will give us access to the oil pan and the transmission pan. Alright, so take a little cat claw or a little flathead screwdriver. I'm going to work these little clips up. See, it's that easy. Almost a tiny little flathead almost works the best. Careful not to break them. What we're trying to get to is these clips here. So I guess you don't have to take them all off. We just take half off like this. We can kind of bend this up. What we need to do is remove these plastic clips so we can get the air filter out of the way because it is blocking the fill port for the transmission. So I know this seems kind of, it might be kind of a hard job, but it's not, I promise you. And so we'll pop the tabs on our air filter, get out of the way. You can see, looks like we've got some 10mm bolts. All right, extension here. Okay, I lied. There's only 2 bolts that need to come out. 2 10mm bolts. Now's a good time to check your air filter. Mine does need replaced, so I'll be getting an air filter. Okay, you can see we got this out of the way. Set it aside. All right, so you'll see now, here is our fill port. Just got this little dipstick tube. It's just a plug, actually. There's no dipstick, but so the manual says it will take 3.7 quarts to do a drain and fill. So that's why I said we're going to go ahead and get 4 quarts ready to go. All right, so this is the fluid you want for your Honda CVT. It's HCF2 fluid. It's been sitting on the shelf for a little while. It's brand new though. So the older transmissions use the DW1. You want to use HCF2 for the CVT. Do not use any other oil. Only use the Honda oil. Also, you need a crush washer. I ordered it with this kit that came with it. That's to replace on the drain valve when you pull it out. All right, so I like to drain it into a container with a measuring ability. This just shows me how many quarts. The reason is just, I know Honda says it's 3.7, but I like to make sure that I'm putting in the same amount that I'm taking out. So we're just using a 3/8 inch ratchet, it fits in here. This. So I actually didn't need a breaker bar. You may need a breaker bar depending on how long it's been in there. And from here it should turn out pretty easy. Just be ready for the fluid. I took out the fill plug up top. So I'm about 3.5 so far. So I'd say it's put the 3.7 is going to be about right. I mean, obviously I spilled some on all over my arm. A little bit on the ground here. So now's the time you want to look at your drain plug. You can see that is a magnet on the end of the drain plug. And there's a bunch, not a bunch, but there's some metal shavings on there. That's normal, especially if it's the first time. That's what that magnet's for, is to catch all that stuff. So go ahead and wipe it off. You can see a little metal shavings. If you didn't buy a crush washer, sometimes you can reuse the one that's on there. You can just turn it around. I'm not telling you to do that, but if that's the only thing keeping you from doing this job, you can get away with that once, twice, just by turning the crush washer around. So I'm gonna let that continue to drain out for a minute, and then we'll put our new crush washer on, put our plug back in, torque it down, then we'll go back up to the top. All right, it's pretty much all the fluid done, just a little trickle. So I'm gonna put new crush washer in. Go ahead and get it started by hand, get it snug down. Down. And you do want to deform this washer. It doesn't have to be like monster tight, but tight enough. All right, so while I'm in here, I'm gonna go ahead and change the oil, even though supposedly it was just done by the dealer. I don't know what kind of garbage they put in it, so pop the drain plug out of the oil pan, get the oil changed, then I'll meet you back up top to refill the CVT. All right, so if we look at our container, you can see we got out right about 3.5 quarts. So that's what we're going to shoot for going back in. All right, so you can see the hole here. It's right behind the shifter there. So you'll need a long funnel. I like to use this funnel here. It's a Lubrimatic funnel. I'll leave a link to that one in the description, along with everything else that I used. But you can set it on there like that, make sure it's down in the hole. Now we can dump our fluid right in here. All right, so we'll go ahead and pour 3 right off the rip before we start worrying about precise measurements. So there's 3 full quarts. All right, so if we look at the side here, half of a quart is 1 pint. So I'm going to shoot for that line there. If you let it sit and drain all day, probably would have had closer, or if it was more level, would have had closer to 3.7. I was just under 3.5, and I said I just spilled that little bit on my hand. So we'll shoot for half of this. Maybe just a little more, just in case. All right. Obviously, this doesn't change all the fluid in the transmission. This is just what we would consider a drain and fill. But that's all there is to that. Like I said, there's no dipstick anymore, so we can't check it. I don't know why Honda did away with that. The dipstick was nice in the older transmissions. You could make sure you were in the right spot. We'll go take our plug, we'll clean it up, stick it back in, put our air filter in. put the bolts back in, and then we'll be ready to start it up and go through the sequence with the transmission. I'll show you how to do that. All right. Back. All right, got everything back together. Make sure everything's good. Oil done. All right, now we want to start the car. We're gonna let it run for a few minutes before we try to move it. Get the fluid circulating through the transmission. Then we're gonna put it through the range, the gear selector range, a few times as well. While I still have it up, I'm gonna look underneath for any kind of leaks or anything. I don't anticipate that. So again, I'm right at about 40,000 miles. You're supposed to do this around every 30,000 miles. The car should tell you on the maintenance minder when it needs done. See, I'm at 40,342. All right, so again, I'm just gonna let this sit here and run for a minute. Then we're gonna just run through all. So we're going to reverse, neutral, drive, so just do that a few times. Make sure the transmission is circulating fluid and engaging each gear, not under load. That's the whole point of this. We're just getting fluid moved around in the transmission where it needs to go. All right, so like I said, check for leaks, and that's it. That's all there is to it. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Quick, easy CVT fluid change on your 10th gen Civic with the CVT. That's all there is to it. So again, down in the video description, I'll leave a link to the funnel and the parts that I use in the video, just in case it helps you out. Sure to like the video if it helped you. Until next time, we'll see you later.